Hello everybody, welcome back to our journey in weaving. So on the last video we hooped up a embroidery hoop. So on this video I want to show you how to actually fill this embroidery hoop with yarn or fiber or something like that. I'm going to start with yarn first because they are a little bit different and there's some things that you need to take into account for either or. But what I do want to cover first is the sort of technicality of a warp, if we can call it that. So over here I have a plain and simple frame loom. This is a small little loom that I bought from Arthur and Bales, just to show you guys how a traditional warp would look and function. So as you can see, there is horizontal threads going up and down. This is what is called the warp. When you put in threads going this way now, that is what is called the weft. So if we can just take this away to make it a bit easier to show you. So I've got this little bit of yarn here. Let me just roll my ball up again. There we go. Cool. So what we need to do is basically go under and over and under and over for what is called a balanced weave. So you'll go under one thread, over the next thread, under one thread, over the next thread, and so you continue until you reach the end of your warp or the end of where you want to put your weft. There we go. So now here's your weft. Now this first line, it's not so important to get it taut or loose or whatever, as long as it's straight. Typically you would be beating this down to the bottom of where your warp is starting. So you can do this with your fingers if your warp is nice and thick and open like this, or you can do it with a fork, you can do it with a comb. You can even do it with a specialized tool that we call a beater in weavers terms. Now, very important, you notice on this thread it goes under. Now if we start with an under again, we are going to be undoing what we just did. So on this side we have to start with an over and then go under and carry that way through again. I'm just going to quickly bounce this little bally along. Now, as you see, I've been working through now and I haven't been paying attention to this end. So as I've been pulling it to get it through, this end has pulled in a little bit. You see when I pull on it some more how that thread bends in. The aim is to try and get this thread as straight as possible, but that means getting as little extension as possible on this thread. So what I typically like to do when I've thread my yarn through is to pull on it a little bit to loosen that tension slightly, making sure that my bottom weft thread is sitting nice and snug. And then this angle, I don't pull the thread super tight like that, I just let it sit how it wants to sit, at roughly a 30-degree angle. It's a little bit lower than that. Then I start at this end where my thread is now attached to the ball or attached to your shuttle, whatever it is that you push through, and then I push down. So you see that bubble that it makes there? That means that as I'm pushing this thread down, it is not creating more tension on this edge thread over here. So that as I continue to weave back and forth, the edges will stay as straight as possible. Sometimes if you're not paying a lot of attention, they tend to bend in a little bit because these end threads tend to be looser than the internal threads. Now this is not so much a problem if you're weaving in a circle, because with a circle there isn't really an end thread. It's all the same thread. Okay, cool. So I'm going to cut this one off and then bring in my embroidery hoop again. Okay, so here we are. Here's my little loose thread. So I'm just going to flip it around so the loose thread sits at the bottom, or you can start working on this side if you like this side more. It doesn't really matter. Now, the biggest difference between this warp and the square warp you saw just now is that there's 2 threads for every one going around. So you can choose to either only use the top threads if you want to make a different design on the front and the back, or even if you just like the look of only using the top threads, or you can use both threads until you get to a certain point where you see that it's a bit hard getting your fiber through this gap with the frame. Then you can start using only the top thread, or you can push it all the way down, but then you must also remember that at the ends here, your weft threads are going to have a little bit of a up and down motion happening and not a straight motion. So now, similar as what we've done before, in that we take our little ball and we push our ball up and down through the threads. So you can choose either the top or both. I like using both if I don't want to make a design that's double-sided, just because it's a little bit easier bouncing my little ball that I've wound up and down between the spokes rather than in between all of these threads. So I'm going down all the way, up all the way on the other side, down and up, and down and up. So now, because it's a circle, you have the choice whether you want to do it right around or only for sections and then turn around. So you can have a half moon, for example, going around and then come back with your thread and go back up again, or you can go right around, right around. The only thing to keep in mind is that if you have a even number of spokes, you might find that when you go right around, where the spokes meet up again, you're going to have the same direction of your weft yarn. So if you don't like the look of that, you can skip a spoke, so go over 2 spokes instead of just 1. So I'm going to quickly weave this around until I'm happy. Here we go. I kind of like the idea of a little half moon business. So now when I'm happy, I'm going to be pulling this end so that it goes towards the middle. So you'll notice that there's a lot of thread if your weft is sitting on the outside that you now have to pull towards the center. So you can pull that until you're happy. So now you can see when you pull it a little bit, this thread is going over. So now we need to go under and then over to go back. There we go. Okay, I've started at this spoke. Put down up a few more. There we go. Now, this is where the next difference comes in between a square weaving and a circular weaving. Because with a square you can clearly see where the end and the start is, and you've got a nice straight thing, you can do that 30-degree angle. With a circle it's a bit more of a feeling. So what I like to do is pull it until it starts coming in, so at that point about, and then push my fingers in on the spoke where the thread's turn is, push it in a little bit and pinch it between my fingers, so that when I pull it, I don't pull it too far, and then push that yarn in a little bit. There we go. So now you can see there, if you look very closely, your yarns are going one over, one under for one thread, and then the opposite over and under for the next thread, and then you just continue that process. I think I skipped a thread somewhere. I can see there they're locked in, but here this one goes over both. You see there? Does that make sense? So now these last few threads are double, you see? Okay, I'm going to have a look at that and fix my mistake, and then weave a little bit more, and then I'll come back to show you guys how it looks. Alrighty, so here you can see I've done a little bit more. I think it's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weft picks now. So you can see that there's sort of a basket pattern working out. If you were to go right around the loom, not stop at a point and come back the way that I did, then you would have this sort of pattern right around your center part. So what I'm going to be doing now is working a little bit of a different color on this side, and then adding a little bit of interest as I carry along. So the next video I'll be covering what I do with roving. So I'm going to work this a little bit up to the point where I want to add some roving parts, and then I'll come back and show you guys how to do that. Thank you for joining. If you would like to see more of this content, please subscribe. I will be doing a whole series going through exactly how I fill up this loom. And that's it. Cheers everybody.